It is time to check in with Dr. Joe Schwarz, host of the Dr. Joe Show, Sundays at 3 here on CJAD, and of course, director of the McGill Office for Science and Society. And Joe, I know from time to time I will bring up something I saw on social media, and more often than not, we kind of laugh at it and dismiss it because everyone apparently is a doctor on social media and has an opinion of one kind or another. But then I came across this, which was of particular interest to me, and I want you to weigh in on it. Let's take a listen to this. I found this on TikTok the other day. Marco?
Harvard Medical School found that there was a 37% decrease in heart disease among habitual nappers. So a habitual napper was someone who napped like 3 or more times a week. 37% less likely to die of heart disease. Now, when they focused on men, it more than doubled. There was a 68% decrease in heart disease among men who nap habitually.
Okay. I have never, ever heard that before. The numbers seem, if they're true, pretty staggering. Have you heard about this, and what do you make of it?
Oh, yeah, this has been going around. And, of course, everything sounds better with a British accent, right?
Yeah, it sounds more credible.
Right. Anyway, he does refer to a legitimate study. And I think the study that he's talking about actually was done in Switzerland. And it involved about 3,500 subjects who filled out questionnaires and reported on their napping habits. And then they were followed for about 5 years to see what happened to them in terms of disease. And of course, when you have that many people being followed for 5 years, some of them will have cardiovascular events, whether it's a stroke or a heart attack, or whether or not they've experienced extreme high blood pressure. So anyway, they followed these. And when they went through the data, they discovered that there had been 155 fatal and non-fatal events, which is, out of a population of about 3,500. That's what you would expect. But then they analyzed the questionnaires that these people had filled out, and it turned out that people who said that they napped once or twice per week had a lower risk of cardiovascular events. And they didn't find any difference if the napping was more frequent or if people took longer naps. Well, this is a study that we call an observational study as opposed to an intervention study. So you just follow a population and see what happens without any kind of intervention. The only thing that this can show is an association and cannot show a cause and effect relationship. But nevertheless, it's sort of interesting. But the question that comes up is whether we're seeing the data essentially as reverse causation here. That is, are people napping because they already don't feel well? Are people who have underlying heart disease, which is very often unrecognized, and is asymptomatic, but it can cause tiredness. So are people napping because they feel that they need a nap due to some underlying disease, or are they totally healthy and just are napping? And it's impossible to tease that out from the data.
It is?
Yeah.
Oh, that's too bad. I thought people just nap. You're tired, you take a nap, 15, 20 minutes. And I'm particularly interested in this because when I used to work early mornings, I used to do that pretty frequently. Yeah. And now I'm discovering, wow, it's really good for you. And now you just kind of said it does not necessarily.
No, I think that is probably true, is that when you have a lifestyle, when, your nighttime sleep isn't all that good because of, the times that you have to wake up, etc., yeah, I think it can kind of replenish your energy by taking a daytime nap. But the question here with this study, is whether people who do this regularly do it because they feel a need to nap due to some underlying disease, or are they just doing it because they enjoy napping? So it's very difficult to tease that out. And certainly the study does not indicate that more napping is better. So that it doesn't suggest that trying to take a nap every day and longer naps does anything. Anyway, interesting enough, this has a long history. I mean, this is not the first time that this has come up. People have been studying napping for a long time. And I remember it was way back, I think in the 1980s, that there was a study that came out of Greece, because apparently napping is quite common among Greeks. And that was the first suggestion that there actually was some sort of relationship where people reported that if they napped regularly, they lived longer. It's just that out of these kind of studies, it's so difficult to really, tease out the relevant information.
Okay.
Observational studies are interesting, but never conclusive.
I'm going to take that as good news just because I choose to. So,
Okay, yeah, right.
Why not?
And look, it was said with a British accent.
So it must be true.
Must be true.
Okay. Joe, let me move on to a couple of other things here. One of them, and I heard the story last week, energy drinks potentially causing sudden cardiac arrest. I think this was tied into younger people. Is that true?
That is true. Energy drinks, of course, have become extremely popular. It's a huge industry, and it's a multi-billion-dollar industry. And, we're talking about things like Monster and Red Bull. Of course, Red Bull is by far the most popular one. And the argument here is that they rev you up, that they give you energy. But most of that revving up is due to the caffeine content, which can be very high, even more than twice what you would get in a cup of coffee. In addition to that, you have some other ingredients like guarana, which is a plant, but it also contains caffeine. And that would not be included in the caffeine content that they list on the label. So there actually may be a lot more caffeine in the beverage than people think. And then there are a bunch of other ingredients in there, things like taurine and glucuronolactone, and the efficacy of that is totally unknown. But anyway, what this was all about, and it did make headlines, is that researchers looked at, I think it was 7 subjects who had suffered cardiac arrest, which of course is critical, and unless your heart is restarted within 4 minutes, you get brain damage. But anyway, these people were in fact resuscitated, but when they did the questionnaires, about what they had been doing just before they had the cardiac arrest, they had consumed an energy drink. However, this was a very small subset of the population that they studied. I think they studied something like 150 people who had recovered after cardiac arrest, and 7 of these were the ones who said that they had been drinking an energy drink.
Okay.
But when you crunch the numbers, it turns out that is more than what chance would suggest. So there may be something to this. But on the other hand, they also found that these 7 patients had underlying genetic heart disease. So this doesn't apply to the general population, but it does suggest that there's a link between energy drinks and heart problems, especially in people who may have undiagnosed heart issues, which is very common.
Joe, we're gonna have to leave. Yeah, we're gonna have to leave it at that because we're out of time. But again, for what it's worth, you're saying obviously if you do have a condition, this is something you want to avoid.
Yeah, so maybe I'll go take a nap now instead of drinking.
Well, if you want to live longer, Joe, that's the way to go.
I'm going to give it a shot.
Dr. Joe Schwarz, thank you, Joe.
Thanks, Eric.
Talk to you next week.